Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're continuing on from talking about Children of Earth, the Torchwood story. This is a two-parter, so if you haven't seen part one, why did you even click on this video? But please go back and try out part one if you haven't seen it already. I'll put a link in the description somewhere. So, after the government basically decides that they might consider giving the 10% of children. I forgot to mention, this isn't just the UK, this is happening all over the world. And so they basically all round up, they try to find as many asylum seekers, as many children who will not be missed as much as possible, which that's just kind of bloody terrifying. And they basically use Frobisher as a liaison, as a diplomatic ambassador to contact with the 456. This is clearly done by the Prime Minister to basically put himself off the hook, so that if something bad happens, they could just blame John Frobisher for all of the political mistakes that have been made during this event. And when Frobisher goes to the 456 to make its deal, the 456 essentially says no deal. I want 10% of your children of Earth, and you are getting nothing else. And so we get a scene then where, because the Torchwood can see what's happening now, they can see them interacting with the 456, the entity which is controlling the kids, thanks to the secretary character, John Frobisher's new secretary, who has those camera eye lenses, which I talked about in part one. And Frobisher basically asks, before we even consider a proper what will happen to the kids, we need to know, what do you plan to do with them? What happens to the children? And we get the scene. If you've seen this story, you know what I'm on about. The most disturbing thing that I think I've ever seen in fiction. It's so uncomfortable. So if you are somebody who is very sensitive to harm or the pain of other people, then probably it's best to turn your ears off for a bit. To put this video on mute or something, because I'm going to explain what happens to the children. Because the 456 basically gets a camera guy to come into his cage so that they can see better inside the gas, because the gas makes everything non-transparent inside the cage. You can literally just work out this tentacle head. This looks like a fleshy I want to say seagull. Not seagull, a swan head. Sort of like a murky swan head. But they take a camera in to show basically everybody what will happen to the children. And what happens is, they seemingly connect it with itself and put it on some sort of hideous organic life support system. The children, and they stay children. They stay children seemingly forever. And we learn that this is one of the kids that was taken by the 456 during 1965. Speaking of 1965, Jack Harkness originally has no idea why the government is after him, and has no idea what any of this is connected, what the aliens connected. The aliens connect to Clem MacDonald, and what Clem MacDonald has anything to do with the assassination of the Torchwood team by the government. But when Gwen basically goes to pick up Clem MacDonald, because he's escaped from his institute after the government basically hire a hit order on him, and Gwen basically goes to he gets arrested and Gwen gets him out of the prison. But whilst this is going on, Jack has this really nice little moment with Yanto. There's a lot of things about Yanto as well that we need to discuss in this story. But before we get that, Jack basically realizes there is a connection when Yanto basically does a research on Claire MacDonald and find out that he is a kid that went missing in 1965 in a particular part in Scotland. It clicks, and Jack starts feeling terrified, and he demands Yanto to show him photos of the three other people's names that Frobisher put a kill order for. And Yanto puts up photos of them 40 years ago, and Jack recognizes them. And he goes to, Jack goes off whilst Gwen makes it back into base. And Jack breaks into Frobisher's house, steals his wife's phone, and uses it to contact Frobisher. However, Frobisher already has basically an incentive, as he learns about Jack's daughter and grandson and captures them and puts them in a facility to keep them safe. He won't harm them, but it's basically to keep Jack in line, essentially, so that he won't spill the beans on what happened before. So basically, and Jack tries to threaten Frobisher's family, but Frobisher's like, you won't, because you're a better man than I am. But then what we learn really kind of messes that up, let's be honest. But anyway, before we go into the revelation, we're going to talk a bit about Yanto and Jack's relationship, because this story basically pushes their relationships further. At the start of the story, I don't think there's hardly any scenes without them through the first half, and they're basically a couple now. There's this whole thing where they don't like the word couple, but they essentially are. They both, everybody that they are very close with, by that I mean Gwen and Reese, knows that they are in a relationship, but they're kind of getting used to the idea, especially Yanto, who has never had a male relationship before like this. But Yanto, he's kind of getting used to it, and sometimes it's a lot to process, especially how Jack is this immortal creature who has done horrible things in the past. And Yanto knows about them. He knows that Jack has done horrible things, but he still loves him because he knows that Jack does everything with the best of intent, that he tries to do his best, and that being with him makes him a better person, both as Jack to Yanto and Yanto to Jack. And there's so much concern with him. I especially love when after Jack gets blown up it's earlier on when Jack basically is like, I've just been shot, I've just died, and Yanto just gives him a nice hug, as if be like, you're okay, I hope you're okay mentally. And Yanto keeps asking him pondering questions about his emotional state, and he's trying to push him answers, which Jack is very closed off to that regard. Jack tries to keep to himself, if that makes any sense, because he's afraid that he'll get hurt in some regards. And this all gets pushed forward with the revelation. But before that, we actually see Yanto's sister in this story, and she basically has discovered that that Yanto is with a man. She says she's seen her friend had seen him with this handsome lad dining in a restaurant, and he looked like an escort, which Yanto's like, he's my boss, but also, yes, he is very handsome, and it's essentially him coming out to his sister That's a really lovely scene, and it also establishes that Yanto has two nephews. A niece and a nephew, sorry. But, so Yanto's family are also affected. And that's what makes this story so gripping, is that a lot of innocent people are being tortured by the sight of their children being possessed by this. All over the world, this is a global threat. And that does play a lot into the story as we get this US general basically trying to criticize as much about the Prime Minister's action and what they've taken with the 456 as much as possible. Which is pretty funny because, and it's all to do with Russell T Davis's political angle, because Russell T Davis absolutely loves putting political messages into his stories. He is an active political writer, and this is probably his most political story yet, as we have basically the government doing possibly one of the worst jobs given the 10% of children, and considering it in this really disgusting manner. I especially, what's the word? I don't want to say like, but I like in terms of how Russell T Davis has written the story, where the politicians, to basically try to cure their conscience, they stop using children, the word children, and starts referring to them as units. As in like 20 units, 5,000 units. As if they're a product. That is messed up. And what's even strong, and it's basically, he hates the Tories, just hate the Tories. But the US general kept him bored and tries to push the Prime Minister. He's basically like, how dare you, Prime Minister, how dare you do these horrible things. But when this US general takes into effect, he basically does the exact same thing, in that he just listens to the 456 and does his best to just push his shoulders forward to try and take as many kids as possible on the streets so that they can effectively do this. A start, the government basically tell everybody that immediately kids are to go back to school, and a select few, 10% of schools, will go and get a vaccination that will cure them from this sinking of speech. And a lot of people agree with it, apart from with some characters, and so most kids get taken away, and until the government basically just go into the schools and escort all of these kids out into large fields where they're all basically gathered up waiting for the 456 to take them, to be used in this horrible demeanour. That is messed up. And so we get to the twist, and Claire MacDonald, he starts smelling as he starts freaking out about the revelation of what happens to the kids when they're taken by the 456. But then he smells something as something completely familiar, something that happens on that very day in 1965. And he turns around to see a man he recognises, but he does not look a day older, as we learn that it was Jack himself that gave the children to the 456 in 1965. Jack willingly gave 12 children to an entity with no reassurance that they would be safe. He just gave them in. We later learn that it was to get an antibody for a virus that was spreading around at the time. And I think it's hinted that the 456 is linked with the Spanish flu. Maybe? I'm not quite sure about that. He says something about a disease which killed millions. It could be the Spanish. What if the 456 is connected with COVID? That is messed up. Sorry, that is, my brain just went a bit fuzzle there. Sorry. That was really insensitive of me. I do apologise. But anyway, but yeah, that is just a revelation that shocks everyone. Gwen originally thinks, oh no, he was just there to save everybody, to try and save the kids. That's what he does. No, he was there to give the kids. And even Nyanto is like, this is not the Jack I know. The Jack I know wouldn't have given up to try and save those kids. Would he? I mean, we all know now that, Jack is this very well respected person, and thanks to his teams basically growing him up. But it's not like he hasn't done it before in Torchwood. Greeks bearing gifts. Oh no, it's not Greeks bearing gifts. What's the one with the fairies? What is the one with the fairies called? He's done it before, giving a child to the enemy, in a sense, to save everyone else. He's done this before. So it's not out of the realms of possibility that he would do this. But it's also incredibly messed up after you learn what happens to them. And that's actually the cliffhanger to part 4, I believe. And part 5 is... Well, part 4 is easily like the best episode of Torchwood, a singular episode. That was the cliffhanger for part 3. Part 4 is easily the best episode of Torchwood ever. As essentially, the Torchwood team have come up with a plan as they basically organise the secretary character to watch in another of these meetings to incriminate everybody in that room once again, whilst Yanto goes onto the phone to his sister and it's been bugged, so the government, Agent Johnson's team can track them down, but doesn't track them enough, but quickly links them to Gwen, and so Gwen has Reese leave with a laptop, as Claire McDonald stays with Gwen, and Jack and Yanto basically storm into a military building. I don't know if it's the 10th building. I could be wrong, but they basically just storm in as a bunch of soldiers put their guns up, and just as Agent Clement basically comes in to try and take down Gwen's just like, oh yeah, we planned this all along, you come in here. Now you will take me to where I need to go, and you need to give Torchwood all its access, because we now have a video footage of all of the Prime Ministers and his team basically admitting that they are going to give up these children in such a disgusting and inhumane way. And we got the footage, and it's on a laptop somewhere with Gwen's husband Reese, but he is in a secure location and will not tell them where he is. So basically, they've twisted the government's arm for Torchwood to help. And it's here where we go, right, this is where the badass is going to kick in. This is when our team is going to start kicking ass. And you probably expect something along the lines of the cliffhanger to part 4 being some sort of battle, some sort of massive battle being teased for part 5. Oh no. Torchwood team basically go in there and state, you are not taking the children. We will go to war with you if you don't stop this. And the 456 does not give in, as it spreads a deadly virus into the building straight away. Jack is with Yanto. And this is the scene in which the story is known for. Because this story sees the passing of Yanto Jones. as Jack holds him to his arms, and all Yanto can think about in his dying moments is that in 1,000 years' time, Jack is going to be still this young, handsome lad. Whatever you do in 100 years, just don't forget me. And also as well, because of the connection with Clement, with Claire MacDonald, the 456 needed to detach him, and MacDonald basically erupts with blood coming out of his ears and his nose and his eyes, and gets killed by the 456. All hope, seemingly all that hope that was being built up in part 4, just absolutely withers away with the death of Yanto. As part 5 is one of the most intense episodes in the series. Part 4, I think, is the best. But part 5, my god, because in that part of the story, it's over. Like, for the most of the story, there's nothing they can do. Jack is like, right, the whole world's going to go to hell. Please let Gwen tell Yanto's sister about his death. And that's, and Jack basically tells Gwen, it's like, Yanto has a niece and a nephew. His sister's got kids. Don't let the government take them. And part 5 is basically the majority of the plot is this really, really intense chase scene between soldiers, government officials coming after and planning on stealing children. Like, Gwen and Reese basically team up to try and escape with all the kids as Yanto's brother-in-law gets a gang of people to try and fight the government as much as possible whilst the kids escape. And just to know what's happening, just to know what is going on, that is just, that is messed up. And as well, essentially, basically all trust in the government is dying out. So the Prime Minister has a plan, and he talks to John Frobisher and tells him that his kids have been selected. The government needs to be shown that they were innocent in the events. So, John Frobisher is going to be shown in public giving his children away to one of these vaccination centres, which we know for a fact isn't actually happening. So essentially, the Prime Minister has ordered Frobisher to give up his children to the 456. But John just cannot do it. So he asks his friend, the other secretary, to get him an item from the police office, and he goes to his family. He kisses them, he hugs them, he gives them warm embraces. His wife can kind of see something's wrong as he takes out something from the box, a gun. And Eurolin's directing is just so heartbreaking here, as we get the shot of through the corridor into the girl's bedroom as John Frobisher basically gets the gun out from behind his back as the door closes, and it goes silent, and then you hear doom, 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 doom. He committed suicide. He killed his kids. He killed his wife so that his kids will not be taken by the 456. That, murdering of family members in such a realistic tone like this could have been taken really insensitive, but man, the emotional hook and the story really justifies giving Frobisher the head to go through with such a horrible, terrible thing. It was a mercy kill. He mercy killed his own wife, his own children, and then committed suicide as he couldn't bear to live what he had done. So after the death of John Frobisher, we have a unit select basically be chosen as the new ambassador, and the ambassador basically goes to the 456 and asks, why does it need the children? We see what you do with the children, but why? What do you need them for? Is it food? Is it like a life support? No. It's the hit. The children produce a chemical which is given to the 456, which makes them feel good. The children, their freedoms have been taken away so they can be used as drugs. And that's pretty messed up. But now that the death of Frobisher has happened and all of this, Agent Johnson basically captures Jack from prison as he's basically committed espionage and all that. And also gets this guy that was working on, who knows a lot about the 456 and is connected to building the cage, the tank, which the 456 currently is currently in. He seems to be the best known knowledge in the 456, and essentially Agent Johnson's like, right, you two are the best experts, you know everything about the 456, you've got about 12 minutes to try and stop the 456 from taking 10% of the Earth's children. Can you do it? And Agent Johnson is the one that captured Captain Jack's, I keep calling him John, but like John Barron. Agent Johnson captures Jack's daughter and grandson. So they are there in the situation, and they're coming up with these plans and theories, and seemingly nothing's happening until they click. Why did the 456 kill Clem MacDonald? There had to be a reason, as it gave out. They basically learned that this sound, this energy wave, which went to MacDonald and was essentially killed him. Essentially a specific wavelength, which is essentially screaming, but to the point where it could kill someone. And they come up with the plan to basically throw this sound wave back at the entity. So it's great, it's all good. They can finally save the day. When we just a few minutes as well as the action around Gwen and Reese is just intensifying. The back of the ranch storytelling here is just incredible. But there's one problem. For the signal to get out, they need a source. They need something that can connect with the wavelength that the 456 is currently occupying. And for that, they need a child. And there's only one child in the local area near enough in time. And Jack's daughter realizes what's going on. As she runs, she screams for her son Alex. But the government hold her back. The military hold her back and grab the child and take him to the center of this wavelength device. And Jack puts him to the machine as he gets basically fried to open up a wavelength machine to kill the 456. Freeing everybody. It's basically the fires of Pompeii, only for a much serious... Oh my god, the fires of Pompeii. Peter Capaldi. James Moran. It's essentially the Fires of Pompeii reunion. What the hell? It's only now just clicked, that's really weird. But it's essentially the same thing. Sacrifice one child for the rest of humanity. It's like how in the Fires of Pompeii is Pompeii or the world. Here it's one child or 10% of the children's population. As the 456 is killed, but so is Jack's grandson, and Jack's daughter just cannot look at him. And we cut to 6 months after, where Gwen is now fully pregnant and says goodbye to Jack as he's like, I cannot stay on Earth. There's just so much pain. There's just so much I've done wrong in the world. So I'm going to space. And I'm going to find a new place, a new home, a new way where I can start fresh, where I can just put all this stuff behind me. And that is the ending of Children of Earth. Woo! Overall, this is one of the best stories in the Doctor Who canon. It takes itself so seriously. There are some really disturbing... It's essentially a horror movie. It's more scary than most horror movies I care to name. But it's done in such a realistic tone, such a grounded, down-to-earth. And it feels scaredly realistic that, my God, it boggles my brain how this story even came to be. It's perfect. It's 10 out of 10. With the exception of the music. Yeah, some of the sound effects in certain places sound a bit off. They use the Nestine Consciousness sound effects for the 456, and some of the music gives that Torchwood like cheesy edginess to it, which sometimes doesn't fit some scenes. But for the most part, it's really good, and Murray Gold, always a fantastic composer. And Ben Foster, of course. So, yeah, it takes itself so seriously. So much happens. And so much of it is just downright depressing. You have the death of Yanto, the death of Jack's son, the government basically allowing 10% of kids to be captured. And in a way, and they speak about it in a way that basically dehumanizes them. It's scary, it's terrible, but it's also terrifically written, well executed, and it's a story which I literally just cannot get outside my brain. So there you go, that's Children of Earth. Sorry, that was a really depressing video. So join me next time where the Doctor has an interaction with a historical event from the future as he interacts with a group of people on Mars. But they find something on the planet of the Red Planet that's not quite right. So join me next time for the Waters of Mars, and we kick off the Time Lord victorious. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra!